Hello and welcome back to OCD Coded. I'm Erin Brown. I'm a therapist and I have OCD myself. And my goal with this is to help you learn to turn your OCD into a superpower. So it's been a minute since I've been on due to the holidays. I'm glad to be back. And I thought I would go ahead and continue with some of my experiences with OCD and part of my journey with it, and maybe talk about some of the most recent ones over the holidays that, as how that can be challenging at times. But the so last time, the first part of the video, my journey with OCD part one, I kind of started from more currently and worked backwards. So I thought I'd start this one by working forward and going from there. And so, I was trying to think back to some of the first times like those kind of fears and intrusive thoughts came. I mean, way before I knew I had OCD, but one of my earliest memories is laying on the floor in the living room looking at the ceiling fan and being like, how do we know that's not going to fall? How do we know the ceiling's not just going to fall on us? How do we know the earth isn't just going to crumble around us, essentially, or the buildings that we built? And how do we know we can trust in these things? And how do we know things just aren't all going to fall apart? And it was really scary at the time. And, it was something that, fear was always around in a lot of ways and under the guise of wanting to keep safe, but also, there was so much fear. And I actually grew up in Gainesville in the 90s. And so there was actually an active serial killer in the town at the time when I was in kindergarten. And so some of those earliest memories too were like I'd overheard people talking at a bus stop about something happening with um, some of the graphic content that had happened. And then I remember having a dream about it that I was babysitting a baby and I went in and it was a baby doll, thankfully in my dream in my little brain at the time. But, and the baby doll being hurt and then me being scared that someone was in the house and I would have this dream every night for months. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and have to go into my parents' room and my dad would lean or hold his hand over the side of the bed so that I could, fall asleep because I needed, to know that they were there. And so thinking about some of those fear things and how overcoming it. And that was a big, part of that growing up is just not being able to get images out of my head, not being able to stop thinking about something, feeling it was really hard to soothe in that way. And so, um, oh, there was another thing in there with that time period, but just thinking about kind of elementary school and the fears that were happening about, that I would have a thought and I just couldn't get it out of there. And part of it when I was growing up too, this is what it was talking a bunch and that there was a story in my home about how that I thought my name was Aaron Brown Hush because I was talking so much and they would always say Aaron Brown Hush, Aaron Brown Hush. And so when someone asked me my name, I said Aaron Brown Hush. And they all thought it was really funny. And it is to some extent, but it also did silence me to some extent. And that's part of with OCD and just how it's being so misunderstood. I mean, my parents didn't understand, I didn't understand, but I was just kind of saying all the racing thoughts or that were going on in my head, even as a little kid, and just wanting to say it all out loud and trying to make sense of how the world is different in my head than when I was, um, different in my head and how it was on the external point. And I think I really struggled with that throughout a lot of times. And middle school is when the prefrontal cortex comes online and lets us do abstract thinking. And that's why little kids think everything's their fault because they don't literally have the brain power to understand why something outside of themselves, and especially in this abstract kind of way. And so that's when OCD can really come out a lot. And I just remember feeling so like free as a kid in so many ways and just, in the moment. And then I can almost remember really feeling my world closing in around me with my fears in my brain and being like, oh my gosh, and you get acne or whatever for the first time and you're realizing that other people see you differently than you feel about yourself and just how hard that time period is. And then me desperately trying to figure that out by asking my friends if they're mad at me all the time. And then, that doesn't go well. And it just really was, manifested in all these different ways where the brain is telling you all these really scary things and you're really not sure what to do with it. And, you really think if I don't do something right now, something bad's going to happen, but you're not sure what. And then you really want to make the right choice and the right choice, and you're afraid to cause harm if you do make the wrong choice. And so decision making has always been really hard for me. People would make fun of me. I mean, even little decisions almost are harder about like, oh, which sunglasses should I buy or whatever. And like, well, what if I get these and then I spend a bunch of money and they break and I lose them and then blah, 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 blah. Or what if I get these and I don't really like them? And it's can be really hard for me. I really have to kind of try something out for a little while. Change is really difficult for me. So it's almost like I want to wear something and see if I like it before. And it's hard to even do that in a dressing room or anything. It's like I have to know how I feel in it for a while before I can know if I'm really going to enjoy it or not. And so then it can get really obsessive about, well, I don't want to spend money if I don't know if I like it, but I have to try it. And then trying to figure out how to navigate through all that. And some of it can come out as a bit of hoarding, kind of wanting to hold on to things, being afraid of, there's usually with OCD, there's usually a time and a money and a harm and a morals kind of aspect. So it's like oh, I don't want to throw this away. What if I need it later? Or I don't want to spend money on this thing if I'm not going to use it or it's not going to work. And and then feeling, but with OCD, that feeling of being trapped. And so a lot of it, the baseline is kind of feeling like, well, what if I need it and I don't have it? And how much that can get into financial stuff and scarcity mindset and all of those different things. But those are those are a lot of the ways that it really manifested for me younger, and all the different ways that it still can, but I can more easily notice it and interact with that, younger part of me again and be like, thank you for trying to help. And that it can be, there's times when all of those things can be helpful to think about those questions, or, doesn't mean the fears are irrational, but just how we respond to those fears matter, and trying to practice responding to them differently and in ways that we feel good about ourselves. So, that is enough for today. And I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a good one until we meet again. Bye.